great to have something to look forward to. There's something about January and February. You've just got to have that thing on the calendar you're so looking forward to. Might I recommend dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse? Let's talk about Hotel Park City. That's where you're going to find Ruth's Chris Steakhouse up in Summit County. After a day of skiing, it is the perfect way to wrap up that perfect day at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And then, of course, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, we have a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse here as well, right in the middle of all the action. So whether it's a play, a ball game, whatever it might be, that delicious dinner, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Plus, it's only fair to remind you that Valentine's Day now is just around the corner, and your sweetheart is going to love that amazing meal. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, 275 Southwest Temple, and also Hotel Park City. The meal you're waiting for, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
The Utah Department of Health and Human Services wants to make sure people in Utah can live safe and healthy lives. To do that, they need to understand what services people can access in their communities and what barriers they face to accessing services where they live. For this survey, they want to hear from people in Utah, specifically people older than 60, adults with disabilities of any kind, or caregivers and service providers of older people or adults with a disability. The results will be sent to the Division of Aging and Adult Services so they can better meet the needs of people across the state of Utah. Take this survey at utahcommunitysurvey.com or by calling 800-293-1538, extension 1610. All information will remain anonymous. Again, that's utahcommunitysurvey.com or 800-293-1538, extension 1610. 800-293-1538, extension 1610.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Construction delays continue north and southbound I-15 in Roy and Clearfield. And a crash still being cleared at State Street and 2100 South. For a limited time, open a 9-month certificate from Cyprus Credit Union and get 5.6% APY. Learn more at any branch or visit cypruscu.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, partly cloudy today with a small storm moving in. We'll see valley rain and mountain snow before it clears up on Friday. Right now, 46 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomis from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
There continues to be a lot of rumbling and occasionally grumbling. A lot of grumbling, actually, when it comes to the state of education, both in terms of higher ed, but also K through 12. And today we want to get past the rumblings and grumblings of the headlines, and we want to get underneath it all to look at how did we get here? Where are we really? What are the challenges? And more importantly, what's the vision of a better path forward in terms of education in America? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's time to think again about what we think we know when it comes to education. And someone who is laser focused on this, Rick Hess, of course, is the Senior Fellow and Director of Education Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. He also has a book coming out next week called Getting Education Right. That's something that we all want to get to. And Rick joins us live on the line. Rick, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good to be with you.
So let's dive into this. And this is one of those where there are things that the left gets wrong, the right gets wrong, and sometimes somebody in between gets it right. But I want to start with kind of the baseline of where are we and how did we get where we are, where we have all of this rumbling and grumbling, but not a whole lot of solution when it comes to education.
Yeah, I mean, I think where we are is in an extraordinarily frustrating place. We have built in higher ed what feels like a bloated cartel that seems as much intent on shaking dollars out of people who want a piece of paper that'll let them get good jobs as a place where you actually develop skills or knowledge. We've got a K-12 system where we've got rampant absenteeism. where we've seen massive learning loss, and where lots of families are looking for alternatives. And we've got early childhood system where folks are scrambling to find affordable, reliable daycare, and the go-to solution seems to be building a couple more grades on the front end of the K-12 system at enormous cost, where you're sticking 4-year-olds on buses to impersonal institutions, and then telling parents, you're stuck the other 180 days a year that schools aren't in session.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So much to unpack in there. And you and your tag team partner, Michael McShane, in the book really get into this whole idea. We got to get to a different kind of vision when it comes to improving education. And I want to start with an area where, again, we love to have the think again moment. You criticize the right in terms of sometimes having too narrow a focus on things like choice or speech. Kind of walk us through that, and then we'll start getting into how do we actually start changing the dynamics in all of this.
Sure. I think the right for the right education I've been doing this stuff, since the last century at this point. And I think for the right, education often feels like an away game. The unions are Democrats and the colleges are Democrats and the advocates are mostly Democrats. And so it's real easy to wind up just playing defense. And so I think what I've experienced for the better part of the last few decades is the right winds up spending its time trying to shoot down a series of either goofy or even toxic ideas that emanate from the left. So federal overreach, or the erosion of discipline in schools, or the attack on rigor and high expectations, or goofy, gender and race theories bubbling out of the woke precincts of higher ed. And what's happened is that the right has spent so much time trying to swat at things that we find troubling, that we haven't always done a very good job of stepping back and saying, wait a minute, what are we trying to do here? What are we for? And how do we offer practical solutions to parents and students who are sitting at the kitchen table? Yeah. We've done that on school choice because there we're empowering families and making it easier for families and educators to find places that work for them. But even there, you'll notice that some of the language, instead of being about here's how we help people solve real problems, tends to drift into the very online stuff about blowing up school districts and ending this and failing these. And it's not the language that says to people, hey, we've got practical solutions for you. It's language that sounds a lot more like the defund the police craziness, right? That got the left in so much hot water.
Yeah, and it is true. I do think the right in particular has been kind of in this defensive crouch when it comes to education. They've been very much, this is what we're against. We always call that the Boston to Philadelphia model. We got to have the Boston stand up and be against things, but you got to get to Philadelphia somehow and put down, this is what we're for. This is where we want to go. And I think that's what you attempt to do in the book, is to get to some of those shared values, respect for families, and then really dealing with the challenges of education and the purpose here in the 21st century. And so kind of walk us through that a little bit in terms of what are some of those core principles that should be driving the Philadelphia conversation, so to speak, when it comes to education.
Yeah, and in some sense, this is easier than people might think. So or do we have to get into fancy philosophy? No. Look, we've gotten to the point where the question of whether or not you believe hard work is a good thing is a live question. The famous KIPP charter schools abandoned their slogan, work hard, be nice, 3 years ago, because they said it was a legacy of white supremacy culture. You will find equity champions who tell teachers to give kids endless retests and make sure you don't give anybody a bad grade. And the question becomes, wait a minute, are you on the side of mediocrity? And do you think that's equitable? Or are you on the side of excellence? Well, when you put this to the American people, 80% of them are on the side of high standards and expectations and hard work, including all of those traditional Democrats.
Yeah.
When you ask the American people, how should we teach American history? Overwhelming majorities of Democrats say that students should learn the Declaration of Independence and Constitution were huge steps forward for liberty. Americans want their kids to learn that America is a country with a grand and important history. We are also a country that has made any number of terrible missteps,
Right.
from the Trail of Tears to Korematsu to Jim Crow, and
Yeah.
Americans also want kids to learn. But if the debate is, hey, should we teach that America's a good place? Should we teach that excellence is a good thing? Should we teach that hard work is a good value?
Yeah.
The left actually wants to take the opposite side of this. These are debates. And if we start from there, and then we say, okay, so then if that becomes a debate about curricula, about expectations, about what students are doing all day in college, that is a debate where we are on the very solid side of a 70-30 split.
Yeah. Great insight, great perspective, and education has been the foundation of this country. It'll be part of the future of the country. The book is called Getting Education Right. Rick Hess, as always, a great perspective, great read, and important stuff for all of us to be thinking about. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And that's Rick Hess, Senior Fellow and Director of the Education Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. New book coming out, Getting Education Right. Nothing more important. Let's make sure we get it done.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. The nationally ranked Cougars are on a roll.
Foose dives low, wait, up, and good! Drops it over the 10 for 2.
Saturday, it's BYU, Oklahoma State.
Khalifa down the lane, still gets there, and lays it up and in! He was coast to coast like buttered toast.
Pregame is at 11 and tip-off at 12. Listen Saturday, BYU, Oklahoma State on Utah's legacy home of Big 12 basketball and the BYU Cougars. KSL News Radio.
Denise has been playing jazz for 40 years. Last concert, one of the musicians fell sick with RSV. Respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, is a highly contagious virus that can lead to breathing problems. This time, she's choosing to help protect herself with Pfizer's RSV vaccine, Abrysvo. Abrysvo is a vaccine for the prevention of lower respiratory tract disease caused by respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, in adults 60 years of age and older. Abrysvo is not for everyone and may not protect all who receive the vaccine. Don't get Abrysvo if you've had a severe allergic reaction to its ingredients. People with a weakened immune system may have a decreased response to Abrysvo. The most common side effects are tiredness, headache, pain at the injection site, and muscle pain. Ask your pharmacist or doctor about Pfizer's RSV vaccine, Abrysvo, respiratory syncytial virus vaccine. For full prescribing information, please call 1-844-989-7284 or visit abrysvo.com. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
when the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to cool my insulin.
I'll face a hurricane without meds. Now that's a tough pill to swallow.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
God, I'm so stressed. It's a brand new year and our business is busier than ever.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 35 features.
Ooma?
Yep. Switching to Ooma is a cinch. Starts at $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Visit Ooma.com. That's OOMA.com to learn more. Ooma. Smart communications for the smarter business.
Alpine Home Medical. We bring wellness home.
Do you ever feel like getting your supplies for your CPAP is just a huge headache? Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent with Alpine Home Medical. Well, say goodbye to the hassle and hello to a stress-free life with our CPAP resupply service. Signing up is a breeze. Just place a call, choose your products, and leave the insurance billing and shipping to us. Our discreet packaging prioritizes your privacy, and we always ensure an on-time delivery. No more trips to the store or worrying about running out of important supplies. We get how crucial your CPAP therapy is, so don't let the stress of keeping up with it affect your sleep and health. Join Alpine Resupply today and enjoy a tranquil night's sleep with all your CPAP essentials. Visit us at alpinehomemedical.com.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
That's alpinehomemedical.com.
Give the star in your life the brightest gift in the world. Name a star after them. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can name a star for birthdays, weddings, or even memorials. Over 45 years, we have named millions of stars for celebrities and individuals from around the world. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333. Give the star in your life the brightest gift in the world. Name a star after them. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can name a star for birthdays, weddings, or even memorials. Over 45 years, we have named millions of stars for celebrities and individuals from around the world. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, the trooper who fell from a highway bridge yesterday has been identified. Odie Meyer is a 36-year veteran of UHP. Second, Sandy City could be getting a pedestrian bridge to get across the road in the Quarry area. Third, the Super Bowl celebration is going on in Kansas City, where the Chiefs are being cheered for their back-to-back championships. Right now, 46 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and we are watching a developing story right now that some shots were fired or heard to be fired at the Super Bowl celebration with the Kansas City Chiefs. We're keeping our eye on that. There have been some reports, and not confirmed yet, of some multiple victims in that, and we'll continue to keep that covered as that develops when we get more word out of Kansas City and the Super Bowl celebration today. And, of course, today is Valentine's Day, but not just Valentine's Day. Also here in the state of Utah, it's Equal Suffrage Day. It was on this date in 1870 that Sarah Young became the first woman in the country to vote under a woman's equal suffrage law. Happened right here in the state of Utah. So we want to talk about how we're commemorating, celebrating, and emulating the courage of those early women and the suffrage movement. And nobody better to do that with than Deidre Henderson, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Utah. And Lieutenant Governor, welcome to the show.
How are you doing, Boyd?
Doing well, doing well. Give us, for those who are more worried about their chocolate purchase today for their significant other, what we should be thinking about on Valentine's Day this year.
Well, it was Valentine's Day in 1870, so 154 years ago today, that the very first woman cast a vote under an equal suffrage law. And that happened here in Utah. Sarah Young cast that vote. The all-male territorial legislature had unanimously granted Utah women the right to vote 2 days earlier. And it was a really big deal in the state of Utah, and it's a bit of history that really has been overlooked and overshadowed. And we've been working hard to kind of excavate that history and dust it off and shine a light on it. We have things to be really proud of in our state, and this is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite parts of our incredible Utah State Capitol is that image of that first vote being cast. I think that's so significant, and Utah being the place where that did happen. And then, of course, it's been a long and winding road when it comes to women's right and women's suffrage, even a point where that vote was taken back away and then recaptured once again. Give us a little bit of the trail and some of the important women who made that happen.
Well, so it's interesting. A year after that happened, so in 1871, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton both traveled to Utah and visited the women here in the state of Utah. And they were a little bit skeptical about Mormon women, but they became very good friends with some of the women here in Utah and remained friends for the rest of their lives. But Congress didn't much like the way that Utah women were exercising their right to vote. And so 17 years later, in 1887, Congress actually passed a bill that stripped Utah women of their right to vote. Now, when Susan B. Anthony saw that, she saw how precarious. There were two different ways to go about getting women vote. It was either through state legislatures or, a U.S. constitutional amendment. And there were different women that believed, each way was a better way. When Susan B. Anthony saw how easy it was for Congress to take that right of suffrage away from the women in Utah, that helped bolster her desire to push for a constitutional amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So after women in Utah were stripped of their right to vote in 1887, they worked really hard for many years to get it back. And when Utah became a state in 1896, it joined the Union as the 45th state with an equal rights amendment, equal suffrage amendment enshrined in our state constitution, which is something to be really proud of. And then Utah women went for years afterward working with women across the country to help secure those rights for other women as well.
Such an important legacy, and I'm with you. We need to excavate, dust it off, elevate it, celebrate it, because I think there are so many things there. You and Governor Cox today issued an official declaration marking this day and raising the stakes just a little bit in terms of what we should be thinking about. Tell us about that declaration today.
Well, Governor Cox issued a declaration declaring today, February 14th, 2024, as Equal Suffrage Day in Utah. And I think it's significant. We do have this incredible story, an incredible history, an incredible legacy, and something that we forget about. And especially this year, in an election year, where it's easy for some people to feel discouraged or like their vote doesn't count or doesn't matter or maybe even kind of forget about it. It's important for us to remember that our suffrage rights, and suffrage just means the right to vote, that those rights were hard won. And it took a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of heartache to get those rights for us. And we need to respect those rights that we've been given.
No question about that. And one of the things that I loved in the official declaration today, again from Governor Cox and signed by you as well as the Lieutenant Governor, was that very statement that voting rights remain one of the most important foundations for our American democracy. And in this constitutional republic of ours, it is that most sacred right. And as you said, it's easy to get discouraged or to think it doesn't make a difference. But if it weren't for some of these early women, like Seraph Young, like some Emily Wells,
Martha Cannon, and yes.
All of them, without their individual efforts, they could have been discouraged. They could have packed it in and said, oh, this is hopeless. But they didn't. Every voice matters. Every vote makes a difference.
Every vote does make a difference. And the beautiful thing about it, too, is there were some incredible men who championed this as well. Men who recognized that if Utah couldn't become a state with the full enfranchisement of its women, then they shouldn't become a state. They were not willing to give up statehood for or give up women's suffrage rights for statehood. And so there were some really incredible champions, both men and women, who fought hard and secured those rights for all of us. And you know what? When we protect the rights of one, we really do protect the rights for all.
That's right. And that is where the declaration concludes. And I just want to share that with our listeners. Again, an official Equal Suffrage Day in Utah. It says, whereas we pay homage to the women and men who changed political history in the state of Utah and echo Martha Hughes Cannon's words, the story of the struggle for women's suffrage in Utah is the story of all efforts for the advancement and betterment of society. I think that was the beginning of the Utah model right there.
I think so. And it's something that we need to remember on a regular basis. And hopefully, at least some of us can remember that today especially.
Fantastic. Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson, thank you so much for joining us on this important Equal Suffrage Day here in the state of Utah 154 years ago as that vote was cast. Such a powerful thing, powerful statement, and thank you for raising the awareness and helping all of us to celebrate and to think again about how important that right is to vote and that we all need to have a seat at the table, a voice at the table, and we all get to vote. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Boyd.
Again, that's Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson. Really powerful statement declaration by Governor Spencer Cox today, along with Deidre Henderson signing that. And 154 years ago, Seraph Young cast that first vote under the suffrage laws, and that's where it all began. And as the Lieutenant Governor pointed out to us, it was a long and winding road, and there were a lot of challenges, a lot of setbacks, and yet it's that advancement forward that we all have to get to, and that the vote of one is the vote for all, and to be able to have that right, and I would say to have that responsibility to exercise that right, really is one of the most important things that we do as citizens in this country. And I know it can be a little discouraging. I know you can say, well, I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. Don't buy into that. I mean, just imagine if some of those early women in the suffrage movement, if they would have said, it's not worth it. I don't have a good choice. Not going to work out for me. I'm just going to pack it in and go home. Then where would we be? Remember, we often run out of energy before we run out of opportunity. And a lot of those extraordinary women like Emmeline Wells, Susan B. Anthony, and a host of others were willing to say, no, my vote matters, my voice counts, and that's how we all move it all forward. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news, and we are keeping our eye on a developing story in Kansas City. Shots fired at the Super Bowl parade celebrating the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory. There are reports of some victims and that there are some people in custody as well. We'll continue to monitor that here on KSL News Radio. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, and we have breaking news. Police in Kansas City say they detained two people suspected of firing shots near Union Station. Victims of the shooting are being taken to local hospitals, but police haven't said yet how many there are. Thousands of people were gathered today outside Union Station to celebrate the Chiefs' victory in the Super Bowl. Utah lawmakers want to come down harder on domestic violence offenders who are illegally holding on to their guns. KSL News Radio's Hugo Rickard Bell has more.
Republican Representative Marsha Judkins says if someone with a drug violation is found with a gun, Utah will punish them harder than someone who regularly abuses their intimate partner. KSL investigated domestic violence crimes between 2018 and 2022 and found almost 20% of domestic violence murders were committed by restricted people. These are people who aren't allowed to have guns. Judkins wants to reduce this statistic. The bill would increase the penalties for reoffending domestic abusers found with a gun. They could see 15 years in prison instead of 5. The proposed bill is yet to be presented to a House committee. Hugo Rickard Bell, KSL News Radio.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day now, 117 points. The NASDAQ is up 164. And our KSL weather looks like a little bit of rain moving in for tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
You know, I never thought one of the greatest sounds I would hear would be the clicking of my belt. When I began my soda weight loss journey 2 years ago, suddenly I started to hear clicks on my belt more every morning. The pounds and inches, they fell away. My belt suddenly had a purpose again. And I lost 37 pounds in just 90 days. I'm 2 years in. And guess what? Every morning I still get to hear the click of the belt as it moves across because it's based on science. Soto Weight Loss is about not doing this alone. You have your own coach and nutritionist to help you every step of the way, and they are there for you. It's based on the science. The results don't lie, and the clicks just keep on clicking. And to me, that's the beautiful sound. You've heard me say it before. When it comes to your Soto weight loss journey, there's no time to lose. There's only time to win. So start winning today with Soto Weight Loss. It's SOTA, state-of-the-art, SOTAweightloss.com.
This Friday from 10 to 1, the movie show comes to Sound Sleep Medical. But first, take the time to learn about a better night's rest. Sound Sleep Medical delivers oral appliance therapy that treats sleep apnea without the use of CPAP machines. They're professionally fit, warranted, and covered by most major medical insurance. End the days of a poor night's sleep. Sound Sleep Medical will help. Call Sound Sleep Medical at 801-716-8672 for details. Sound Sleep Medical.
If you know me, Hans Olsen, you know my wife's the most important thing in my life. What she wants, I deliver. And it looks like we're getting new cabinets. I took her to the Euromax cabinet showroom in Pleasant Grove, and she hasn't looked at me the way she looked at those cabinets in 15 years. Doors that close quietly with the press of a button, LED lighting inlaid, waterproof box, shelves, and doors that won't warp from moisture. Every color and design imaginable for those doors. Simply put, the most magnificent cabinets your eyes will ever behold. Mike and Max combined a vision of over 35 years of experience to bring us Euromax. Max with his Ukraine roots, and Mike with 25 years of installation, it delivers the greatest in cabinet design, building, and installation. Truly, my amazing wife was in awe. We both were. And if I have to buy her love, I will. Go see all the possibilities at EuromaxFurniture.com. That's EuromaxFurniture.com. Whether you're rebuilding a kitchen or starting a new build, it's EuromaxFurniture.com for your cabinets. Euromax, built for you.
Jazz Plus is here. With Jazz Plus, you can watch games live from your TV, computer, tablet, or phone. So don't miss any of the action when you're at home or away. Can't get enough of your favorite team? Go behind the scenes and see what the team is up to on and off the court. With flexible plans, you can choose what works for you, from full season to monthly, or just pick a single game you want to watch. Sign up and subscribe today at UtahJazzPlus.com.
Traffic and weather together now, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
Construction delays linger, and these are pretty heavy at times. North and southbound I-15 lanes are restricted as you're going through Clearfield. The bigger backup is definitely southbound I-15 with delays from Roy to 650 North. Imagine pop, rock, and jazz hits with the full power of the Utah Symphony. Get your tickets at utahsymphony.org/pops. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, partly cloudy today with a small storm moving in tomorrow. We'll see valley rain and mountain snow before it clears up on Friday. And right now, 48 degrees, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, America continues to deal with big-time debt and deficit spending. Seems to be a nice tag team these days. Politicians are too busy doing the theatrics and the politicking as opposed to actually getting the work done that is in the job description. And meanwhile, taxpayers are going to go through the whole process of trying to figure out what it is, how is it working, why is it not working, what comes next. So we want to get past all of that chatter. We actually want to get to some different ideas in terms of here's a way we can avoid the next fake fight and false choice, the next shutdown showdown, which, by the way, is not that far out. March is the next deadline that Congress has punted the ball to. Someone who's been thinking about that in a really interesting way, Martin Louie, is Associate Professor of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. His teaching and research broadly focuses on public finance with an emphasis in public financial management. And Professor, welcome to the show. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Great piece in The Hill talking about maybe channeling. You started by channeling your inner Bill Clinton in terms of the definition of is, but explain that for our listeners.
Yeah, we had a piece in the Hill. I co-authored this piece with Michael Granoff, who's an emeritus professor of accounting at the University of Texas at Austin, on the idea of tax expenditures, and we really tried to dig deep into what the definition of expenditures really are, with a way of perhaps forging some sort of compromise to avoid the next shutdown, which you're correct is either going to, if this proceeds, it would be either March 1st or March 8th.
Yeah, exactly. And with the two-tier system that the new Speaker of the House has used, we kind of get a double bite at the shutdown to showdown this time around. And so break that down for us in terms of how this could play out and how this could, I love the way you frame this as this is a way to change the conversation and start a different kind of conversation in terms of real solutions.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of what we were trying to go for. So we started with the premise that both political parties should want to reduce the deficit, given the state of $34 trillion debt and a $1.5 trillion federal budget deficit for 2024. But of course, they disagree on whether expenditure cuts or tax increases are preferred. And we think that if you focused on the true economic definition of expenditures, that perhaps some sort of compromise could be forged in the future. And our piece is focused on tax expenditures, which are credits and exemptions and deductions from gross income for certain taxpayers. And in our tax code, we've got at least it's over 160 tax expenditures, which equal about 1.5 trillion in foregone tax revenue. So the amount of tax expenditures, foregone tax revenues, is almost equal to our annual deficit, at least in 2024. And the way we frame it is that these tax expenditures they're really expending, just by a different name. And we give the example of the federal government providing, really can try to subsidize research in two ways. It could, write a check out to pharmaceutical companies for research for prescription drugs. We give the number of $500 million, or they can actually allow the company to take a tax credit for $500 million. While one is coming out of the appropriations budget, the other is coming out of the tax code. They're both essentially spending. So our argument is that if we focus on tax expenditures, and you agree that both of these are really, or tax expenditures are a form of spending, that economically conservatives would be on board with a reduction in tax expenditures, in that would lead to a reduction in spending, and liberals would be potentially on board because that really would lead to an increase in tax revenues to deal with the federal deficit.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important way to frame all of that. I think it is something that both the political left and the political right can get on board with in terms of looking at those things, as opposed to immediately everyone going to their corner and just shouting kind of the talking points back and forth about, taxes for the rich, tax breaks for the rich, or no entitlements for the poor, and you get into the whole populist arguments coming from both ends of the political spectrum, which is the comical portion of it all. But as you look at that in terms of what would have to change to take this definition of expenditures to reframe the conversation, is there anything specific that would have to happen in terms of those definitions by law or statute, or is this something that we can just get to the table and start having a different kind of conversation?
Well, I don't think there's anything necessarily in the immediate term that you'd have to make any changes in law, other than people would just have to, have a better understanding of what expenditures truly are, and take a broader view of it. Now, that being said, we do propose some procedural changes that I think would shed more light on tax expenditures in the future. So first, before, putting a new tax expenditure in the tax code, we'd want to make sure that direct spending is not a better alternative. So, I mean, one of the reasons these tax expenditures are in the tax code is because, as you know, once a provision is in the tax code, it's very difficult to remove. So, and unlike spending, which should, although it doesn't necessarily, with all the CRs that are happening, should go through the appropriations process every year and be evaluated. Tax provisions generally aren't. So, the idea is that we should try to avoid them as much as possible, although some things make sense to be provided through the tax code. And then second, that there should be some sunset provision for tax expenditures. These should be evaluated regularly in state and local governments, especially some states. We have sunset commissions that evaluate the need and the necessity of agencies regularly every 10, 12 years. These expenditures should be looked at much more closely as well, because many of them have outlived their use.
Yeah, no question. The sunset provision, I think, is such an important part of all of that conversation. And I just chuckled when you said once something is in the tax code, getting it out is more than an act of Congress. It's a big bite and a long chew. Before I let you go, Professor, give us one other thing that we should be thinking about as it relates to this. I think there are so many things in here that just make so much sense in terms of doing this different and getting to a better result.
Yeah, I mean, we have a tax expenditure budget, so people are aware of this. So, it's not. I mean, it's not that people aren't aware of it. There just needs to be a light shine more on it. And again, I think that this is something that it's not a panacea for dealing with our mismatch between revenues and expenses at the order of magnitude that they currently are. But it's a starting point, and I think the benefit of focusing on tax expenditures, not only in the short term but in the long term, is that if we can focus on these tax expenditures and perhaps remove some of them that may not be useful, this is going to make our job easier in the future, in the sense that we're not going to need deeper cuts in traditional spending, and we're not going to need higher across the board tax cuts to bring our budget into balance.
Yeah, great perspective. This is a great piece. You should check this out at thehill.com. Martin Luby's Associate Professor of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. And Professor Luby, thank you so much for joining us today. This is a fascinating approach to a perpetual problem, unfortunately, as Congress continues to kick the can down the road. This would change the game significantly. I think this is one really worth elevating and exploring, because I think it can make a real difference in actually getting that financial house in order. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Again, that's Associate Professor of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin, Martin Luby. And I like the thinking. I had not thought of it in these terms, but I think there's a lot of things in there that just make sense. And if nothing else, it would change the dynamic of the conversation. And that's what needs to happen in Washington if we're going to get to better policy, which can help us reduce that deficit spending. And ultimately, we've got to reduce that $34 trillion debt. All right, we'll be right back.
Some updates affect your commute.
Emergency traffic due to a multiple vehicle crash.
Other stories affect lives and safety.
This helicopter is on its side. Propeller gone.
When you're listening to KSL News Radio, you're getting the first information on the biggest stories. When it's breaking news, we have you covered at KSL News Radio.
Hi, Cindy Olsen here to tell you about the National Embroidery Month sale at Dave's Bernina in Provo and St. George, featuring a limited time 48 months no interest offer. Buy a specially priced Bernina 790 Pro or 590E machine and receive a free embroidery accessory and software gift bundle worth $3,500. Full feature Burnett sewing machines are as low as $1,499. That includes free software, a $1,200 value. All machines are discounted, such as the Bernina 500E for $1,999 and a hot deal of $2,999 for the Bernina 700E. 25% off embroidery hoops and Bernina embroidery bundle and modules. All new Berninas come with a 5-year warranty and free classes. Hurry in for amazing bargains on previously loved machines at Dave's Bernina, 2017 North, 550 West in Provo and 691 East St. George Boulevard.
KSL and Bear River Lodge want to send you and your Valentine on a cozy romantic getaway. Win an overnight stay in a Bear River Lodge studio cabin, plus a full-day snowmobile or side-by-side rental. Until Valentine's Day, this package is available for just $4.99, but you can win this amazing package for free on the KSL contest page. Enter now. Text the word contest to 57500 or go to kslnewsradio.com/contests.
I'm Jason Walton. In business, I mentor hundreds of Utahns as they pursue their American dream, the same dream career politicians treat with contempt. They send our money to our enemies abroad while shortchanging our veterans at home. It's not right. They're letting drug cartels escort criminals and terrorists across our border. It's time to stand up. So I'm running for the United States Senate. Stand with me. I'm Jason Walton, and I approve this message.
For John's 60th birthday, his family planned to drive down Old Route 66. But the trip took a detour when his wife got sick with RSV. It's a highly contagious virus that can lead to breathing problems and hospitalizations.
This year, we don't want to cancel our plans. We're protecting ourselves with Pfizer's RSV vaccine, Abrysvo, respiratory syncytial virus vaccine.
Abrysvo, a vaccine to prevent lower respiratory disease from RSV in people 60 years and older. It's not for everyone and may not protect all who receive it. Don't get Abrysvo if you've had an allergic reaction to its ingredients. A weakened immune system may decrease your response. Most common side effects are tiredness, headache, injection site pain, and muscle pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-844-989-7284 or visit abrysvo.com.
So don't wait. Ask your pharmacist or doctor about Pfizer's RSV vaccine, Abrysvo, because every breath matters.
Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago? You looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Ah, the joy of taxes. It could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Mike Stevens and the team at Capital Wealth Advisors can help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up your tax strategy session with Mike Stevens and Capital Wealth Advisors now. Call 801-210-5500. That's 801-210-5500. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 801-210-5500. Advisory services offered through Capital Wealth Advisors, LLC, a state of Utah registered investment advisor. Firm may not give tax advice.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
There's desperation and anguish.
More than 80,000 Afghans have since arrived in America, but this story is still unfolding. I'm Andrea Smartin. In my new podcast, Stranger Becomes Neighbor, we'll find out what happens to these new arrivals in our communities. Who would help our newest neighbors? Follow us at kslpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, police in Kansas City say there have been multiple victims in a shooting that occurred near the Victory Parade for the Kansas City Chiefs. Second, the trooper who fell from a highway bridge yesterday is Odie Meyer, 36-year veteran of Utah Highway Patrol. And third, Sandy City could be getting a pedestrian bridge to get across the road in the Quarry area. Right now, we're seeing partly cloudy skies with 48 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, earlier this week, I spoke about the growing interest in apprenticeship programs in the country. I think they are absolutely crucial and vital. It's something we need to get back to. There's tremendous value there. And yet in that process, as the apprenticeship programs have been picking up a little bit recently in popularity, there's always the federal overreach, where the Federal Rules Committee comes in to make sure it's being done properly. Sometimes that's good. Government has a role to play. Sometimes that's bad. It makes it impossible to actually do the positive thing we're trying to do. Now, we want to dive a little bit deeper on that, and so really thrilled to have joining us back on the program Robert Lerman from the Urban Institute. Had a great piece in The Hill, what to like and what not to like about new federal apprenticeship rules. And so giving us the deeper dive, and Robert, give us some perspective, first of all, in terms of the National Apprenticeship System, what's going on there, and then why suddenly some of these new rules and regulations?
Well, thanks for having me, Boyd. The apprenticeship system is a bit complex. In one sense, we have a government-sanctioned system called the registered apprenticeship, and the states, about half the states have their own state agencies that register programs. The other half are registered through the federal government. So you have that split at the beginning. Then, of course, employers can create their own programs and not register. So we have a lot of what might be called unregistered apprenticeship programs. Unfortunately, the U.S. lags way behind in terms of apprenticeship opportunities, especially for young people. And our group, Apprenticeships for America, has been working hard to promote approaches that would scale the system.
Yeah. And as you look at that, you mentioned in your piece the fact that federal spending on apprenticeship programs has jumped recently from about $30 million to over $250 million a year. And the other thing I love that you pointed out in your piece is that these are, sometimes we think of apprenticeship and we just think of, trades, or we think just of construction. But this can be used in a wide variety of places. And as you've watched this and as your group has analyzed this, talk to us a little bit about some of the areas where that additional government reporting or regulation is actually inhibiting, especially small businesses, from really participating and deploying these apprenticeship programs.
Well, under normal circumstances, to register your program does take a lot of effort already. And what I was saying in the op-ed is that we should try to simplify, not expand these requirements. The new rules, some of which are well-intentioned, try to protect the apprentices, try to make sure that the apprenticeships are at a high level, would actually complicate the situation and probably discourage some participation. So we want to move in the direction of simplifying, not making things more complex, especially since all apprenticeship programs by employers are voluntary.
Right.
No one needs to start a program. And if we make the registered system too complex, at best, employers will choose the unregistered or not create apprenticeship programs at all.
And I think that's the real risk there. If it does become so complicated that you have to have an army of people or lawyers or lobbyists or whoever to execute it, especially for those small businesses who can't, hire someone to run the program or to fill out all the paperwork for the program. I think striking that balance is so vital. Yes, we want to make sure we're protecting those apprentices, that they're in safe places, that they're actually getting value and learning. And at the same time, if we make it so complicated, so complex, we're going to lose that in the country. And to me, that's a real loss, especially as people are really looking at it differently.
Now, the new rules do have some good points.
Yes.
They are trying to provide skill standards so employers don't have to create their own. And those skill standards, if possible, we could use those, again, to simplify the system. If you use the skill standards, you should be able to register like you register a computer. And we see some move in that direction. So there are some things that are looking better about these rules. But overall, it's a lot of extra stuff.
Yeah, it's the extra stuff that always gets us in trouble, especially coming out of Washington, for sure. Well, great perspective, as always. Robert Lerman's a professor of economics at American University, senior fellow at the Urban Institute, and author of many different books, including Improving Career Outcomes for Youth. I think that's such an important piece of the puzzle. Professor Lerman, thank you so much for joining us today. An important conversation around apprenticeships today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and that's Professor Robert Lerman, senior fellow at the Urban Institute, and this is an area that I'm really passionate about because I believe in apprenticeship programs, and not just for builders, not just for contractors. I think there are a host of places and spaces where we should be looking at how do we increase the number of young people in particular who can be involved in apprenticeship-style programs. We've talked a lot about the need to really be creative, that not everybody fits in the higher education model. We have some great institutions here in the state of Utah who are flipping those models, challenging the status quo, getting rid of just the thing that we've done for so long when it comes to higher education, and really looking at what's a way we can do it better, what's a way that we can meet those in some of these areas where an apprenticeship would be far more valuable to the lifelong benefit of that student than sitting in a classroom for 4 years. And so all of that is really important. There's a whole nother area as it relates to apprenticeships when it comes to people who are re-entering the workforce or are going to have to upscale their skill set or a change in dynamics in their family life where suddenly they're in a different area where an apprenticeship-style program could be so much more effective than just sending them back to a university. And so it's exploring all the ins and outs, all the ebbs and flows of that. And the thing that worries me the most, and the thing that Professor Lerman pointed out, is we have to be careful that we don't allow the regulatory regimes, again, many of them well-intentioned, and as we pointed out, there are some good things in there. The Department of Labor has a job to do and a role to play, to be sure, to protect apprentices, make sure they're in safe environments, that they're getting the skills that they need, that they're not being forced to work crazy hours and those kinds of things. But if they do so much, one of the things that was pointed out by Professor Lerman was the fact that to qualify for some of these in terms of registering, a small business would have to disclose all their financial statements. They'd have to go through all of these different hoops and hurdles just to say, okay, it's okay to be part of the program. And no small business is going to open up all of their books and all of their things to the Labor Department and pass that along, let alone have the time and energy to manage it and to keep all of that paperwork up to date. So apprenticeship programs work. They can be very powerful. They're a great way forward for so many that we need in our workforce. We just have to make sure we do it right and that we don't let government overreach ruin it for the rest of us. All right, that wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news, but don't go anywhere. Big hour number 2 coming up next, including a little Valentine's message, some political power couples, and what we can learn from their superpowers. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Gunfire broke out this afternoon at the Kansas City Chiefs Victory Rally, and police say several people were struck. 2 armed people have been detained. ABC's Alex Perez is there.
The rally had just ended, maybe about 10 minutes or so, when we saw the chaos. We saw groups of people sort of running, appearing to be running for their lives. And then we heard sirens. We heard ambulance sirens and police vehicle sirens. Now, at this point, the information we have is still early.
And we don't know how many victims may have been hurt. There again are 2 people in custody. And this happened in the area around Union Station in downtown Salt Lake City. Back here in Utah, Natalie Klein is responding to her potential ouster and calls for her to resign from the State Board of Education. She took to Facebook to say the board is moving too fast for her to properly respond. She included an email sent to fellow board members hinting at election interference since her seat is up for re-election this year. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day right now, 150 points. The NASDAQ is up 203, about 1.3%. And our KSL weather looks like a storm moving in, getting a little rain and a lot of snow in the mountains. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
When's the best time to plant a tree? It was 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? It's now. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and I remember years ago being sent home from elementary school with a small tree in a styrofoam cup. I know some of you can relate. If that was planted, it's now bigger than you are. Your finances are the same way. The best time to get started, or the best time to get a second opinion, is now. And with time and patience, imagine how big your financial tree could be. 20 years ago, if you invested $1,000 in Apple stock, it could be worth over $500,000 today. That is a big tree. Do that for you and do that for someone you love. Call Trajan Wealth today and help us help you plant that financial tree. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600. Or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
This Friday from 10 to 1, the movie show comes to Sound Sleep Medical. But first, take the time to learn about a better night's rest. Sound Sleep Medical delivers oral appliance therapy that treats sleep apnea without the use of CPAP machines. They're professionally fit, warranted, and covered by most major medical insurance. End the days of a poor night's sleep. Sound Sleep Medical will help. Call Sound Sleep Medical at 801-716-8672 for details. Sound Sleep Medical.
The life of a small business owner. Keeping the lights on, calling all the shots. And then there's workplace accidents. 500-degree ovens, rusty nails. Danger lurks around every corner. Workplace accidents can happen, but there is an easy way to keep your employees covered. Talk to your agent about workers' comp coverage from PIE, or go to pieinsurance.com and get a quote. Safety first, then PIE Insurance. Individual rates, offerings, and savings may vary, subject to policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states and situations.
There are two amazing productions, very different productions, on the stages right now at Hale Center Theater. One is Clue, that I thoroughly enjoyed. It is a madcap comedy, and as I mentioned, it has the greatest death scene I have ever seen on the stage. Then down the hall in the theater in the Round, it's Fiddler on the Roof. It is breathtaking. You are going to love both productions that are underway right now at Hale Center Theater, but there's so much more to come. May We All, a country musical, is coming up next. Then The Time Machine, The Nutty Professor, The Addams Family, which is wonderful, and The Magician's Elephant Plus. The season wraps up just before the Christmas production of A Christmas Carol, Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Get your tickets now. Go to hct.org. And be sure to pick up gift cards, too. They're perfect just to slip in a thank you card. Go to hct.org.
We have additional breaking news here at KSL News Radio. We are learning now that at least one person has been killed and as many as 10 others injured in this shooting in downtown Kansas City, not far from where a victory celebration for the Kansas City Chiefs was going on. Traffic and weather together now, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Still seeing a slow ride southbound I-15 from just before 5600 South Roy into Clearfield due to a right lane restricted with construction. For a limited time, open a 9-month certificate from Cyprus Credit Union and get 5.6% APY. Learn more at any branch or visit cypruscu.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, partly cloudy today, a small storm moving in tomorrow with valley rain and mountain snow, and that'll clear up on Friday. And right now, we're at 50 degrees with cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is Valentine's Day today. We often talk about a lot of the anger, fear, frustration that we hear from a lot of our elected officials and politicians across the country. A lot of that is anything but love, kindness, compassion, respect. And so we want to change the game a little bit today and see what we could actually learn from some political power couples and what their superpower could teach the rest of us on Valentine's Day. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
You know, as we look at all the challenges and the difficulties we have going on in the country and around the world, so much of it is the opposite of love and respect and kindness, relationships. Everything's become a transaction, it seems. And so as I was thinking about that this morning, I was reminded of a conversation I had with Brooke Walker, KSL5 TV, on her program a couple years ago, as it was a Valentine's Day, and we wanted to take kind of a political look and some lessons that we could learn from some political power couples. And so I wanted to dig into that today. I think we need a little exhale from what's going on in Washington. And so I want to go through a few political power couples and kind of what their I think every couple has a superpower. And there are lessons to be learned from that. And, of course, no couple is perfect. Every marriage requires, I think, a great deal of mutual toleration, if you're my spouse anyway. I've chosen a few couples that I'm sure were imperfect in many, many ways, but they also had some unique superpowers that I think are worth celebrating and emulating today. And so let's go in the Wayback Machine. Let's start historically. Let's go back to John and Abigail Adams. They may have been one of the original power couples in our nation's capital. And one of their superpowers was actually handwritten letters. These two were often apart, but they were deeply connected. They exchanged, I think, 1,100 letters that are known anyway over the course of their lives together. I'm one of those who believes in the power of a handwritten note. Much of what we know about the Continental Congress, by the way, in the early days of America came from the correspondence between John and Abigail Adams. My wife, Debbie, and I, we actually started a tradition way too many years ago to count. We actually have a leather journal that we keep. We actually call it affectionately the football. And the rules are really simple. It's a place to just write down a note, a thought, a memory, some gratitude for something, a funny story. Short or long, doesn't matter. It is not a place, by the way, for grievance or gripes or nagging or frustrations. So the rules are really simple. When it's on my side, on my nightstand, I write something in it. I place it on Debbie's side. She writes on it, comes back and forth. There's no set time schedule. There's no deadlines. There's no stress. There's no box to check. And we've done this for years and years, and it has just become a great tradition of handwritten expression back and forth with no other real rules. But it's been a great benefit to us. And it's one, if you're looking for something for your Valentine today, just go buy a nice leather journal, title it The Football, or whatever you want to call it, and then just begin and just write back and forth. It's a great way to have a different kind of connection, especially in our very digital world. All right, let's go to another political power couple, Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt. And I actually think the superpower among many between Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt was that they valued each other's uniqueness and they valued each other's voices. They both had super strong personalities. They had deep convictions. I don't think they agreed on a whole lot of things, but they always had this desire to speak out. And they were powerful because they recognized their partner's voice, and they were comfortable sharing the spotlight or having the other one lead out in a lot of cases. You've heard me mention it on this show before. Most people forget that it was Eleanor Roosevelt who first addressed the nation following the bombing of Pearl Harbor. It was her. And I actually think, if you go back and listen to it, I actually think her speech was way better than Franklin. Roosevelt always gets credit for the Day of Infamy and all of those kinds of things. Eleanor Roosevelt spoke to the heart and soul of the nation in an incredible way. And part of that was because President Roosevelt was very comfortable with Eleanor having the spotlight and having a voice. She actually had a weekly radio show, if you didn't know. That's actually what she was on. after Pearl Harbor and became the first to address the country. Another very interesting political power couple on this Valentine's Day, James Carville and Mary Madeline. I think they have a unique superpower in that they really believe and live that oneness is not sameness. Now, these two may be the ultimate in political odd couple. Of course, Mary was a longtime Republican strategist, primarily with the Bush, both Bush 41 and Bush 43. James Carville, of course, longtime Democratic strategist, really began with the Clintons. And I am pretty certain there is not a single political issue that they would ever see the same way. They've both played at the highest levels of presidential politics, and they love the back and forth of the conversation. But one of the things that I admire most about them is they say that having the conversations with each other actually makes them think better. They've also learned this art and skill of leaving work at the office and just focusing on each other everywhere else. I think that's a really good lesson on a Valentine's Day. And there are so many others throughout history that were so good at recognizing the difference, really understanding the power of it. You had Ronald and Nancy Reagan, and I actually think the Reagan superpower was laughter. If you go to the Reagan Ranch, not the Reagan Library, the Reagan Ranch is a very personal space, but there are pictures everywhere, and there's not a one of them that doesn't show President Reagan and Nancy Reagan laughing. They were always laughing, enjoying being together, enjoying one another's company. And I think that's another really important lesson. And again, there are a host of others out there, but on a Valentine's Day, I think it's important for us to get beyond just the regular back and forth of all of this and look at some really great lessons throughout history when it comes to what actually matters most in the end. And I think those that have really stood the test of time, you think of the hallmark of great relationships and great partnerships, it is about not doing things as a transaction, but everything being built on a foundation of relationship, of learning to truly listen, to ask good, meaningful questions, to be totally present. We've talked about that a lot on this show, and I think political power couples actually learn to do that even better as they listen to one another, value the difference, and then recognize what actually matters and what is just fluff and what is just distractions as opposed to the things that actually matter the most. So all of that for you on a Valentine's Day. Again, some great lessons. John and Abigail Adams, Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt, James Carville, Mary Madeline, and a host of others down through the ages to give us all a good idea about relationships are what matter in the end. Nobody's going to remember what the political debate was on a Wednesday in 2024. But you might remember the relationship, the conversation, the connection you had in an important relationship, and that's got to last you a lifetime. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. The nationally ranked Cougars are on a roll.
Foose dives low, wait, up, and good! Drops it over the 10 for 2.
Saturday, it's BYU, Oklahoma State.
Khalifa down the lane, still gets there, and lays it up and in! He was coast to coast like buttered toast.
Pregame is at 11 and tip-off at 12. Listen Saturday, BYU, Oklahoma State on Utah's legacy home of Big 12 basketball and the BYU Cougars. KSL News Radio.
Hercules First Federal Credit Union has been offering the finest in financial services to the community. Always about community. Growing stronger together. They've been doing it since 1946. And right now they have an opportunity for you to become part of that important community and family at Hercules First Federal Credit Union. If you're in need of a mortgage, come get your mortgage with Hercules. They have conventional and government loans. Most important, they are strategic in terms of understanding the lending market. They can match or beat rates and fees. And they create this stress-free experience to get you what you actually need and all of that. Of course, they also have their really exceptional Hercules Gold Tier checking. You get ultimate in identity theft protection, cellular care coverage, full-service travel, and cashback rewards, all to help you grow stronger together with your friends at Hercules Credit Union. You can find their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, or Salt Lake City. Or as always, you can find our friends at Hercules online at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
My wife and I both, we ended up mildly sick for a few months, and the nasal congestion was probably the worst part. I had like a post-nasal drip, just super congested all the time. We were taking everything we possibly could, but nothing really worked.
Kyrie was miserable until a friend recommended Navage. Navage offers immediate drug-free congestion relief, flushing your nasal passages with refreshing saline and sucking out mucus, germs, and other airborne irritants. Don't live in misery this cold season. Use Navage so you can breathe easier, sleep better, and feel your best right away.
The biggest thing Navage has done has completely cleaned out my nasal passages. It was from the first use. I was able to just clear out anything that was stopping me from breathing correctly. Navage helps me clear the way, literally clear the way, for me to operate better in the rest of my life.
Experience the Navage difference yourself. Navage is available at Navage.com or at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid. Navage, Navage.
Bish's is skipping this year's big RV show for a big reason. It costs each dealer a fortune, and guess who gets stuck with the bill? Yep, you. So skip the big show expense and come to the Bish's Better Than Show pricing event for free admission, free parking, and better than show pricing on new and used RVs. Only at Bish's RV in Salt Lake and American Fork, February 12th through the 17th and President's Day. Better pricing's big, but better selection? That's huge. Instead of spending your money to see a handful of models hauled to the show, you're getting better than show pricing on our entire inventory of new and used RVs. You'll find pricing as low as $140 per month on approved credit, plus clearance pricing on all remaining new 2023s. You'll also make 0 payments until May on approved credit and get generous trade-in offers on your current RV. Start shopping now at skipthervshow.com. Better brands, bigger selection, lower than show pricing, and free admission? Why settle? Come to the Better Than Show pricing event at Bish's RV in Salt Lake and American Fork, February 12th through the 17th and President's Day. Bish's RV, where memories begin. Stock number 73504 and 76976. Based on 20% down, 8.99% APR for 180 months. Subject to prior sale. See dealer for details.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger. Because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I lock up my Old Spice Fiji aluminum-free dry spray to keep that 24/7 lasting freshness safe for myself. Fresh coconuts, palm trees in the wind. It's like catching waves in Fiji. Actually, I just talked myself into a refreshing spritz of Fiji. My Old Spice is missing! No!
It's time for the Sportsman's Vacation and RV Show, February 16th through the 19th at the Mountain America Expo. Save $2 at UtahRVShow.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, police in Kansas City say there are multiple victims in a shooting near the Super Bowl victory celebration. 1 person known dead. As many as 10 others have been injured. 2 people are in custody. Second, Natalie Klein's future on the State Board of Education, the subject of a board meeting this afternoon. And third, a storm is rolling in this afternoon that could drop lots of snow in the mountains and rain in the valleys. And right now, 50 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. And, you know, as we watched the Super Bowl play out over the weekend, there was one very interesting backstory that I thought was worth noting, and that was the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, the Super Bowl starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, Brock Purdy. And it was pointed out that Brock Purdy was making about 25% of what the backup quarterback for the University of Texas was making. And that there are a number of college athletes now that are actually choosing to stay in school so that they can earn more money than they might earn in the pros. And so all of that leads to a really interesting conversation in terms of student athletes at state colleges and universities, many taxpayer funds going into a lot of those places. And we have this whole new era with name, image, and likeness where a good thing. A young person can benefit off their name, image, and likeness because they are adding value. But it also raises some important questions in terms of how do we go about that in the right way? And how do we make sure there's transparency in that process? Because after all, if we're talking about millions and millions of dollars and young athletes, what could possibly go wrong? To help us break all of that down, really thrilled, as always, to have the executive editor of the Deseret News, Doug Wilkes, in the building with us. And Doug, welcome back to the show.
Boyd, it's great to be with you again. I miss you upstairs.
So as we look at this whole thing, I know this has been one of high interest for you in terms, especially the transparency portion of this. I think everyone agrees that having some transparency in this process, because it is this interesting mix of free market and education and tax dollars and everything in between. Kind of give us the lay of the land.
Well, the Deseret News started out requesting NIL contracts and related records from 5 public universities: University of Utah, Utah State, the ones that are public here in Utah. They're taxpayer-supported institutions, and the universities are reviewing the contracts to determine whether they comply with NCAA eligibility rules. The universities denied the request. We took that. They claimed that they were educational records under FERPA. We took that to the arbitration committee, basically the records arbitration, a 7-person panel, who sided unanimously with the Deseret News. And this is what they said: considering the public interest in college sports, the fandom, and the immense revenue, and revenue is a key, this is billions of dollars, our public institutions capture from athletics, it's apparent to us that a university compliance officer reviewing these contracts to ensure players' eligibility under the rules is indeed conducting the public's business. And they ordered the universities to release the records. They don't want to do that. They went to court to try and block it. We're in court with them now. And then the legislature got involved saying, wait, this didn't go in our favor. Let's change the rules. And so we've been working up at the legislative session to try and stop them from making this secret. Transparency is the key. Yeah, transparency is always the key in all of this. And as you mentioned, there's a number of bills and things happening in different committees up there on Utah's Capitol Hill, as well as a lot of things happening nationwide. Give us a sense for up at the Utah legislature in terms of what is bubbling up and what is it that we should be watching for as citizens and as taxpayers. Well, as taxpayers, anytime they try to shut down records, particularly where millions and millions, if not billions of dollars is at play, that's not good. I don't think it's an educational record, and certainly the ruling we had suggests it's not. Now what they're saying is, well, this will put the University of Utah and all of our institutions at a competitive disadvantage. We fundamentally disagree with that. It's like the athletes already know, the coaches know what the money is. The people that don't know are the public. Consider if you have businesses in Utah putting millions of dollars into a collective. The collective is giving that to athletes for name, image, and likeness. But as in the case where they gave truck leases to 84 athletes, it doesn't say Cam Rising on the truck or the image and likeness of the player. It says University of Utah. This is all about promoting the university, and so you need some transparency in that place. But that gave a lot of publicity to the university nationally. That was a competitive advantage. To suggest it's a disadvantage is just not true. And Utah, which leads out on smart things, right? The Utah Compact, the compromise, they should lead out on this in the interest of fairness and transparency. Yeah, I think it's an important thing to get to in all of this. And as you've dug into this, give me a sense in terms of where is the balance line in some of those things? I mean, I still have these images of boosters in smoke-filled rooms, passing $100 bills to athletes, and a lot of things that were done under the table now are sort of on the table, but it's still kind of a quirky, discombobulated system. In terms of what does that actually mean? What does it mean to a student athlete? Are they really, being maximized, or are they just being used one more time in just a slightly different way? Well, it is on the table, but the room is locked. That's the problem. Who's in the room? Who's providing the money? One of our main concerns is we are worried about the impact this will have on female athletes. Do they have the same opportunity as the men? What's the amount of money going to them? A name, image, and likeness, if you have a star like a Cam Rising, that's Cam Rising. He's doing his thing. Does there have to be a female match? Well, not necessarily. But if you have a collective doling out money to a whole team, are they doing the same thing for women? Are they doing the same thing for the World Series bound last year Utah Utes softball team? So fairness, equity, all of that. Equity is kind of a loaded word these days, but fairness isn't. Be fair and be transparent.
Yeah, and I think the collective, is the interesting component to me in this. If you have an individual athlete and that's all that's happening through an individual, that's one thing. But if there is a group that is being a collective, then you get into Title IX issues, and you get into some of that fairness component in terms of men and women's sport. And so to me, that collective component is where it really is the differentiator, I guess.
Yeah, and it is. And that's what we're worried about. Consider if, tons of money comes in from communities over a period, from different businesses over a course of 3 years, and all of a sudden the University of Utah is awarding contracts, or Utah State or somewhere else. Is there transparency? Is this someone that has curried favor over the past 3 years? Is it a fair process? We're not saying there's any malfeasance. Just open it up. Just let there be transparency. Let the Open Records Act do what it's supposed to do, rather than change the act that you fought so hard to maintain in Utah. We're a state that does things the right way, and this should be a part of that.
Yeah, I think that transparency, always coming back full circle to that transparency solves a lot of problems, prevents a lot of things from going sideways that we hope won't go sideways. And to me, that protects everybody. It protects the athletes for sure. It protects the institutions. It even protects the businesses, I think, in that sense, as well as the community and the taxpayer.
Absolutely. You assure the public that things are going right, and that's actually going to provide more money because more people will donate because they know it's done on the right way.
Yeah.
Come advocate. Sing loud, boy.
As always, Doug Wilkes give us a good behind-the-scenes look. I think this is an important issue, this name, image, and likeness, and again, it is billions of dollars when you add it all together in sports and college athletics in particular. And so how we go about it matters. I think it's great that you can have some of these athletes benefit and profit while they're still in school. I think that can be a good and powerful thing. But as with everything, if it's done behind closed doors, if nobody's in the room where it happens but a few, if we don't have the transparency, we should not be surprised at the absolute predictability of consequences. And to Doug Wilkes' point, we can do it different. We can do a Utah model version of this, and I think we can show the rest of the country the way it's supposed to be done. Doug, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Boyd.
All right, great perspective from Doug Wilkes, executive editor of the Deseret News. An important one. We'll continue to watch that up on Utah's Capitol Hill. We're watching it nationwide as well, as everyone starts to grapple with how do you deal with these name, image, and likeness, often where these college athletes are now earning sometimes even 4 times as much as the starting quarterback in the Super Bowl. We got to keep that transparent. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. We have additional breaking news about this shooting in Kansas City. Police say 1 person is dead, 9 others injured when the shooting unfolded at the end of the Kansas City Chiefs victory celebration. Here's ABC's Alex Stone.
Where only moments beforehand the celebration was underway after this volley of gunshots. The scene was replaced by debris, overturned barricades, crime scene tape, and flashing emergency lights. Police confirming victims were hit. Witnesses said at first they thought it was fireworks.
Oh my God, it was so packed in there, so difficult to get out, but we just took our time, walked slowly, and we made it to here.
Alex Stone, ABC News.
Here in Utah, a mountain snowstorm coming in tonight that will last until tomorrow evening. National Weather Service meteorologist Christine Cruz says the biggest impact will be on tomorrow's morning commute through Parleys and the Cottonwood Canyons.
So if you have plans across either of those routes or Logan Summit, those locations, be prepared for winter driving conditions.
Cruz says the storm will get some rain into non-mountain areas, primarily farther north in the Cache Valley. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 151 points on the day so far, and the NASDAQ closing trading today, 203 points higher, about 1.3%. The S&P 500 up 47. And we're looking for Rain again and snow in the mountains. That's weather's next. KSL News Time, 2:30.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Do you hear that? If you're like many people, that's the sound of your money. Just lying there in a checking or savings account doing nothing when it could be out there earning more money for you. But at America First Credit Union, we can give your money a wake-up call.
What?
What's that? Rise and shine, Bucky. We can get your money working in a high-yield certificate account, earning you a much better return than traditional checking and savings. Up and at 'em, buddy. We gotta go.
Huh? Where are we going?
To America First. You'll love it there. They're going to help you do so much awesome stuff.
All right, I'm coming.
So get your money working with a high-yield certificate from America First. Head to americafirst.com today to check out the latest amazing rates. Subject to membership, eligibility, terms, conditions, and change. Federally insured by NCUA.
If you've ever experienced running out of hot water before your shower was done, or hard water spots on dishes and fixtures, I've got a deal you might be interested in. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and you probably already know that a tankless water heater and a water softener solve both issues. If you've ever thought about looking into getting a tankless water heater, here's the deal I was talking about. Through the end of February, we're including a free water softener with every new tankless water heater we install. The best part of this deal might be that you never have to worry about being the last one to the shower again, or that you don't have to waste the money keeping 40 to 50 gallons of water hot 24/7. To take advantage of this deal, call Any Hour Services before the end of February. The visit's free and there's no obligation to buy. If you decide to have us install a new tankless water heater, we'll throw in the water softener for free. That's right, a free water softener when you purchase a tankless water heater. Pick up the phone and call Any Hour Services right now for all the details. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
IVC is celebrating 20 years providing quality service in Utah. You've probably heard their saying by now, life starts when the pain stops. IVC is the most trusted interventional and vein center in the state, and they've been voted Best of Utah Valley 10 years running. The 7 physicians at IVC provide state-of-the-art, comprehensive vein care with many years of experience. The team at IVC takes the time to get to know you and your veins so you're comfortable with the right diagnosis and the right treatment. Patients are like family at IVC. You've also heard many radio ads over the years with real people describing how IVC has dramatically improved their quality of life by eliminating the pain and discomfort caused by varicose veins. Well, what are you waiting for? Don't let vein disease slow you down even one more day, because life starts when the pain stops. Visit iVein.com today to set up a free screening. That's iVein.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Heavy construction delays linger southbound I-15 Roy to Clearfield with the right lane blocked, and a crash in Utah County blocking a left lane northbound I-15 at 8,000 South in Spanish Fork. All machines are discounted during the embroidery sale at Dave's Bernina in St. George and Provo. 48 months, no interest, and amazing buy a machine, get a free gift offers. Great bargains on previously loved machines. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, partly cloudy today, small storm moving in tomorrow, valley rain and mountain snow, and then clears up on Friday. Right now, 50 degrees and partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas with from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, expectations for our students continue to change. Might actually mean a little bit of a disaster or a little bit of a bumpy road for their futures. Between universities getting rid of failing grades, arguing over the merits of standardized testings, it seems like we've almost completely lost sight of the disciplines of learning and learning to love learning, by the way. We continue to move the finish line closer and closer. In fact, I think there are some institutions that are actually giving out ribbons and trophies before people have even started because they're just ready to give them out. So I think this is a disservice to the next generation. I think it hurts all of us in the process. And so we want to take a look at, are we really preparing people for what's next? So we're going to talk about that and get beyond just the headlines of what's right, what's wrong, and get to what needs to come next. Really pleased to have joining us on the program today, Liberty Vittert, a professor of data science at Washington University in St. Louis and a resident on-air statistician for our friends over at News Nation. And Liberty, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Great piece on The Hill, thehill.com. No more D or F grades. Grade inflation is masking a looming crisis of ignorance. Give us the backstory.
Well, you see it happening at universities and schools across the country that we are lowering standards. And at an Oregon school, which is what prompted this in the first place, they're actually removing D's and F's. Students can no longer fail, which is just sort of a crazy concept that we aren't going to have students that ever fail anymore.
Yeah, and there are lessons in that. At my house, we like to call this the absolute predictability of consequences. And it seems like we're removing those consequences, especially in the classroom.
Exactly. The urge to give everybody an A it's understandable. Good parents would do anything for their children. You want to, alleviate stress in any way you can. But, as you said, a huge part of growing up is learning to fail. And frankly, that's what a large part of college is. And, more so than that, do you want your nurse to know what drugs, can and not be mixed together, or your doctor to distinguish different parts? There are things that we need people not to fail so that they can actually become productive members of society.
Yeah, no kidding. I do not want my heart surgeon to have been given an honorary A just because they didn't want to make him feel bad that he didn't know where the aorta was supposed to be connected there. One of the interesting things you pointed out in your piece, Liberty, was a Gallup survey that over 90% of parents believe their children are at grade level, and yet only half of them really are. What does that tell us?
Well, the problem is that this has been a movie. It's not like all of a sudden we're just getting rid of failing grades. This level of grade inflation has been happening really over the last 20 years. So, educators are basically, and I include myself in that, are really failing just this entire generation of kids. And parents don't know about it. And this is partly because these students are bringing home A's and B's for mediocre or really failing work ever since kindergarten. So parents have no idea how mediocre their kids' work is. Standardized testing has really been the only sign that we've seen, but they're getting rid of that too.
It's so stunning. It kind of goes to the old Incredibles. Everybody's special, so nobody's special. But in this case, nobody knows anything because everyone's afraid of that. Our good friend, former Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska, who's now actually at a university in Florida, says we have to go back to celebrating scar tissue. Which is what they do at his house. And I think he's onto something there, that scar tissue of failing actually is an important ingredient to becoming more successful in the future.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of research out there that shows you got to be afraid of failure to be able to succeed. And if there's no failure to be afraid of, you're not going to succeed. And we also have this whole issue in school systems where kids know that if they complain enough, the professors will roll over. It's a huge cycle, especially with DEI, where students will complain. They'll say that you either don't care about my mental health, you're racist, you're homophobic, you're sexist, you're anti-Semitic. I'm Jewish, and I've been called anti-Semitic before in this case. It's just this incredible cycle where it becomes easier for professors to give out A's because to give bad grades means you have to deal with all of this stuff. And students aren't that dumb, and they realize this. and professors roll over, give better grades for mediocre work, and then it's just this terrible cycle.
Yeah, and that cycle is and it starts when our kids are young. It starts in the home when we reward bad behavior, whether it's a tantrum, and whether that's a tantrum to get the cookie or the ice cream, or a tantrum to get the A instead of the B in the class. If the adults in their world reward bad behavior, none of us should be surprised when we actually get more bad behavior.
Exactly. And, we really, we're going to really start to see the consequences of this because, when it comes time for these kids that have been given participation trophies, that have been given a cookie and have been given A's, when it comes time to get a real job and they can't cut it because the education system has really spent 2 decades failing them upward, they're going to end up, jobless and wondering how this could happen to them when they were A students all along.
Yeah, so fascinating. Yeah, just in our last minute here, we know COVID clearly played a little bit on the over-compassion, over-sympathetic side to a lot of adults and in a lot of classrooms, especially on university campuses. What's the one thing that we ought to start looking for and demanding in education that will start to change the dynamics of where we're headed?
Accountability. Our teachers, I love our teachers. I'm one of them. But we have got to be accountable. This idea of standardized testing has got to come back. There is no other way around it. There's no other way to really compare and grade students across states, cities, counties. There's no other way to do it than standardized testing. And we need to be accountable that our students are able to compete and to get levels of standardized testing scores that they need to succeed in life.
No question about that. And Liberty, before I let you go, obviously as we try to march this thing forward, talk to us for just a second about parents and families and what's the responsibility and the accountability that you're talking about that we've really got to start way upstream before they ever get onto a college campus.
Well, I really think parents, need their own choices in how their kids' schooling works. But they need to demand accountability, too, and not allow, parents can be just as guilty when their kid comes home and they're upset because they got a B. They can be just as guilty about going to the teacher and blaming the teacher. By the way, the teacher, sometimes it is our fault, but they need to demand that accountability, too. They need to demand that their kids get a good enough score on that standardized test, whether that be working with their child at home or whether that be helping their child in the classroom by supporting their teachers.
Fantastic. Liberty Vittert, a professor of data science at Washington University in St. Louis, resident on-air statistician for our friends over at News Nations. Liberty, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Great piece. Check it out at thehill.com. And we are failing the next generation by failing to fail them when they fail. They're never going to learn the lessons if we don't. We'll be right back.
Maybe it's because they're excited about Leap Day at the end of February. This is Jeff Kaplan. At Advanced Window Products, Leap Day means they get an extra day to build windows. But for you, it's an incredible opportunity. This month, they'll give you $2,500 off on 10 windows or more. $2,500 off on the highest quality custom window frames and double pane glass. They'll lower your energy bill and give your home an exciting new look. Any style, any color. At Advanced Window Products, you save money because they cut out the middleman. They build your windows right here in Salt Lake City. They install the windows and they guarantee them for life. So beat the rush. Once it gets warmer, their schedule backs up and you have to wait months and months for installation. So make the call and get to the head of the line. Save $2,500 and get custom precision windows built right here in Salt Lake City. Advanced Window Products offers 60-month 0% financing. You can buy now, pay later, but call now. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Going to a Jazz game is more fun together. Host an unforgettable night at Delta Center with colleagues, friends, families, whoever. Group tickets are the best way to get everyone together to cheer on the Jazz. Pick from a variety of options for seating, dining, and game day experiences. Start planning your big night at the game by calling 801-355-DUNK, emailing group sales at utahjazz.com, or simply visit.
Breaking news on KSL News Radio. We're going to go live to a news conference in Kansas City after the shootings at the victory parade for the Chiefs. Let's listen live.
And we recognize that there are some who are injured. We are praying for the safety of everyone. I've talked to a few different folks so far. One, we have spoken to the Kansas City Chiefs, who made clear that their prayers are with everyone who was at the parade today, everyone in Kansas City, and everyone who was touched by this incident. They also noted that their players, coaches, and staff are all accounted for at this point and safe. We, however, note that this is a fluid situation, so all that we are sharing now may change as the hours go ahead. We've also received a call from the White House that offered all federal assistance in the investigation. We had federal agencies present today. We appreciate that, and certainly in the days ahead and the hours ahead, we will make sure we continue to do this work. I will say personally, first, a thank you to the women and men of law enforcement, to the women and men who work with the Kansas City Fire Department and our other agencies. When the shooting started, I, like many others, ran for safety. I saw a number of agencies, including the Kansas City Police Department, officers with guns drawn who are running towards danger. We thank them for that. As I was leaving the scene, I saw members of our Kansas City Fire Department administering aid to folks who are seriously injured without concern for the shootings and the challenges that were near them. This is absolutely a tragedy, the likes of which we would have never expected in Kansas City, and the likes of which we will remember for some time. However, I want to say thank you to those who are making sure that we are safe today, those who are investigating this incident, and those who will continue to make sure that those who committed these acts today are brought to justice. We'll come back for some questions at the end of the Chief's comments, but now the police chief, Stacey Graves.
That was the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas.
At the conclusion of the Chiefs rally today, there were shots fired on the west side of Union Station. Immediately, officers responded to the area, took 2 people into custody, and also immediately rendered life-sustaining aid to those victims. We're still gathering information on the number and the status of victims. But like I said, we know that one of the victims is deceased. We also know that officers ran towards danger. Officers were there to keep everyone safe. I'm angry at what happened today. The people who came to this celebration should expect a safe environment. We had over 800 law enforcement officers, Kansas City and other agencies, at the location to keep everyone safe. Because of bad actors, which were very few, this tragedy occurred, even in the presence of uniformed law enforcement officers, who again ran towards them and took them into custody. To the people who were injured in this tragedy, our hearts go out to you and your families. This investigation is just beginning, and we are working safely to clear all surrounding areas and businesses. This is still an active investigation. We will continue to keep you updated. We will keep you updated on Twitter and most likely a follow-up press availability. Did you have anything?
You're listening to KSL News Radio. This is a news conference live from Kansas City after a shooting at the Kansas City Chiefs victory parade. Let's continue to listen here. The speaker at this point is being drowned out by the sirens in the background, and we're trying to lean in and listen.
Right now, we have up to 10 to 15 injured by... Yes. Right now, we do not have an exact number of people who were victims of a gunshot wound. It could be upwards from 10 to 15, with one deceased.
Do you know how many are in critical condition at this point?
I do not have conditions on our victims just yet.
Any believed to be children?
I do not believe that any of them were children.
Any law enforcement injured in this? First responders?
Nothing of note.
Chief, what prompted? What do you guys believe now prompted the shooting?
That is still under investigation. I myself was outside when I heard the shots fired. It is an ongoing investigation. It's going to take us a little bit to determine exactly what led up to the shooting. I will say, though, we do have 2 suspects in custody.
I have a question for you.
Circulating on social media that some fans may have helped detain one of those.
I have heard that as well. I have heard that fans got involved in the apprehension or the pursuit of one of the suspects. I cannot confirm that right now, but that is something that I have heard myself. Yes.
What about the response time? Because you say 10 to 15 hostages injured in the shooting, but there was 800 officers there. This happened pretty quickly. So can you talk about when this started, sort of a timeline from there to the point where your officers responded to the point where you had KCFD helping to
Absolutely.
Your first aid?
As soon as the rally concluded, there were shots fired on the west side of Union Station. Officers were on scene in the area. I know one of the suspects was immediately pursued on foot. Like I said, there's 2 suspects in custody. I have heard the information that was just requested. I will confirm or deny that. But after that, immediately officers began rendering life-sustaining aid, calling in fire, which is the fire department, to also assist those victims.
Do you know if there were more than 2 people taken into custody? Because we had 2 people, after you guys had made your announcement, there were 2 people in custody, 2 people live on our air being taken, handcuffed, put into vans. So can you tell us about that and the process as this investigation continues?
I don't know exactly the 2 that you're talking about that your camera caught on video being loaded into a wagon. I don't know that, but I can tell you that in and around that scene, it is still active. Not active in necessarily threats, but it's a very active scene. We're still investigating. This is still early on. We still have parties that are walking into hospitals.
Chief Graves, do you know anything about the suspects in terms of where they're from? Are they from?
I do not know that, but that's something that I also will be finding out.
2 questions. We were hearing upwards of maybe 20 shots. Can you talk about the number that you heard while you were...
I'm hearing 10 to 15, possibly 15, with the one that is deceased.
And do you know anything about the timing? It seems odd that it's waited to the very end of the rally.
I don't have anything about... I can't give you an answer on the timing. I can just say that... that's when it occurred, and we are investigating what led up to that. Maybe once we get some of those details, we'll know why that happened at that time, but right now it's still too new.
Chief, was it just one incident or multiple incidents that injured multiple?
That is something that is under investigation.
Mayor Quinton Lucas, you talked about how you were on the ground and you yourself...
The mayor is returning to the podium now.
We're still waiting on a timeline and trying to understand what exactly happened. But we were having a Super Bowl parade, and this is what the country is talking about now. What is your message to this city at a time like this?
I second the comments by the chief of police. I'm heartbroken. First of all, I'm praying for the victims and the families impacted. I start with them. I'm incredibly upset, disappointed. I was there with my wife. I was there with my mother. We never would have thought that we, along with Chiefs players, along with fans, hundreds of thousands of people, would be forced to run for our safety today. I think that I'll let the investigation shake out before coming to any further conclusions, but I think the initial response absolutely is anger. You know, we have done a number of these now, and this is a day that a lot of people look forward to, something they remember for a lifetime. And what they shouldn't have to remember is the threat of gun violence, marring a day like this, injuring them and their families. This morning, I was actually thinking about bringing my child, as many people in Kansas City did. And I don't want us to have to, in our country, for every big event, think about a concern of being shot. As the chief noted, we had a lot of law enforcement officers there today. They did exceptional and outstanding work, and I will second that again. Because on your timeline point, I was inside of Union Station. We heard something. A number of us start running, and I see a stream of officers going the exact other direction, in with guns drawn, ready to address danger. And that was the situation throughout. People who responded absolutely immediately. But I wish that we lived in a world where they wouldn't have to do that. I wish we live in a world where we wouldn't have to see incidents like that. But I'm as heartbroken as anybody. We will do a full and thorough investigation. I hope that we bring whoever this is to justice. and we will continue to try to make sure that we can be as safe as possible. However, when you have people who decide to bring guns to events, when you have people who are deciding to try to mar events, celebratory ones like this one, all of us start to become members of this club that none of us want to be a part of, which is those who have experienced mass shootings. I hope for Kansas City this is one of the last times we experience them.
Were the players in any danger at any point?
What's that? Sorry, I'm going.
Players in danger at any point?
Was I in danger?
No, any of the players, Chiefs players.
You know what? I think we'll let the investigation take a look at that. The police department responded effectively, I think incredibly quickly, to make sure that people would be out of harm's way. That being said, a number of us had to flee from a situation because we heard a sound of gunshots. So I'll let you answer your own question in terms of whether you think that's something that puts you in danger or not. In my view, many times shots are nearby, you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know who's firing them and all of that, then perhaps there is a situation of danger. But
Thanks, guys. Thank you, guys. We're going to get back inside.
Can I ask a fire question? Of the 10 to 15 injured, that you say, are all of those gunshots and do you have a sense of how many, or are some of those also critical?
We've covered that. We don't have that information.
I'll just answer real quick. Hold on. 10 to 15 is what we have. Potentially 15. One deceased. I don't have a condition on the other gunshot victims.
You're listening to a hastily